Listen carefully. This is not a motivational message. This is a confirmation. There are moments in history when the unseen world pauses, not in fear, but in recalculation. And right now, something has shifted around you. Not around nations, not around crowds, around you. You've felt it already. The sudden silence, the unexplained distance, the way people who once had access to you can no longer read you. Conversations feel thinner. Familiar faces feel farther away. And loneliness arrived not as punishment but as containment. What you are experiencing is not abandonment. It is strategic isolation. There are systems on this earth, old systems, hidden systems, that study spiritual patterns the way generals study war maps. They don't move against chaos. Chaos serves them. They move against order, against alignment, against souls that refuse to bend. And when a soul cannot be corrupted, delayed, distracted, or domesticated, something very specific happens. Attention turns toward you, not loudly, quietly, behind closed doors. Emergency meetings don't happen because you attacked. They happen because you endured. You stayed intact when pressure was applied. You stayed conscious when confusion was offered. You stayed clean when shortcuts were placed in front of you. That endurance made you a variable they couldn't predict. And unpredictable variables are dangerous to systems built on control. So the noise was removed. The crowd was thinned. The access points were shut down. You weren't cut off to weaken you. You were cut off to protect what was forming. Chosen one, you didn't disappear because you were forgotten. You disappeared because you were being armored. Armor isn't forged in celebration. It's forged in silence, heat, and compression. That's why this season feels heavy. That's why distractions fell away without explanation. That's why people drifted without closure. The isolation wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to seal you, to make sure nothing from your past could cling to you when your future demands visibility. Because what's coming requires clarity, not contamination. Strength, not residue. Precision, not emotional debt. Before we go any further, pause for a moment. If this message resonates with your spirit, type "I am chosen" in the comments. Like this video so it reaches who it's meant for. And subscribe, because what's unfolding next in your life requires understanding, not confusion. Now, understand this deeply. Isolation is always temporary when the mission is permanent. The silence you are in is not the end of the story. It's the chamber before release, the recalibration before movement, the moment right before a door opens that cannot be closed again. Stay still, stay aligned, stay clean. The world didn't grow quiet around you by accident. It grew quiet because something powerful is about to move through you. Point 1. Why your separation was sudden and non-negotiable. You did not slowly drift away from people. You were removed, and that distinction matters more than you realize. One season you were present, available, involved, and deeply connected to routines, conversations, and familiar faces. And then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. Messages went unanswered. Invitations quietly stopped coming. People who once had constant access to you became distant, unsure, or completely absent. This was not coincidence, and it was not the result of something you did wrong. For the chosen one, separation is never gradual, because gradual separation invites interference. When distance happens slowly, people reach, pull, negotiate, question, and attempt to reattach themselves to versions of you that no longer exist. The moment your soul crossed a certain threshold of readiness, access to you became a liability. not because others were intentionally harmful, but because familiarity gives people unconscious permission to project their fears, siphon energy, distract focus, and delay growth without even realizing it. You were not removed because you were fragile. You were removed because you were becoming uncontainable in environments that were never designed to hold the weight, clarity, and authority you were beginning to carry. Expansion inside small rooms always creates friction, and the divine does not negotiate with spaces that cannot stretch. The restructuring of a soul is never performed in public view. True recalibration happens in silence, where there is no audience to applaud, criticize, advise, or misunderstand the process. This is why explaining yourself started to feel heavy. This is why your tolerance for surface-level interaction dropped. This is why you stopped trying to translate your inner changes into language others could digest. Your spirit recognized something before your mind fully accepted it. The isolation was not punishment, it was protection. When God prepares a soul for visibility, influence, and impact, He first removes witnesses so the transformation cannot be distorted by opinion or prematurely exposed to scrutiny. Growth that is watched too closely is often reshaped to satisfy observers instead of truth. What felt like abandonment was actually surgical precision. What felt like loss was clearance. What felt like silence was the only environment capable of holding what you are becoming. You were not cut off from people, you were preserved from interference. And when the time comes for reconnection, it will not be with the past, but with alignment. Point 2. Why loneliness became the tool, not the wound. Most people experience loneliness as emptiness, as if something essential has been taken away from them. For the chosen one, loneliness is not emptiness at all, it is compression. Compression is a deliberate force. It is what turns raw, unshaped material into something dense, refined, and unbreakable. In this phase of your life, external stimulation is reduced on purpose so that internal clarity can increase without interference. The silence is not accidental. The distance is not punishment. It is a controlled environment designed to strengthen what cannot be seen from the outside. During this period, you may have noticed that your tolerance for shallow conversations dropped dramatically. Small talk began to feel draining instead of entertaining. You became far more selective with where your energy went and who was allowed access to it. Noise started to irritate you. Constant chatter, distractions, and emotional chaos felt invasive. Drama no longer felt exciting or engaging. It felt foreign, almost childish. This was not you becoming antisocial or cold. This was not withdrawal. This was your nervous system recalibrating itself after years of overstimulation and emotional interference. The loneliness you felt was not because something valuable was missing from your life. It was because something unnecessary was being removed. Excess connections, misaligned attachments, and emotional clutter were quietly falling away. When you are constantly surrounded by people, expectations, and noise, your intuition struggles to be heard. It gets drowned out by opinions, projections, and external demands. But when you are alone, truly alone, your inner voice becomes impossible to ignore. It rises without competition. That is why, during this phase, your perception sharpened. You began to see people more clearly, not through hope or nostalgia, but through truth. Behavioral patterns became obvious. Repeated cycles stood out. Motives that were once hidden behind charm or familiarity became transparent. And once clarity arrives, it does not leave. Once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. This is the irreversible shift. Loneliness was never meant to make you desperate for connection. It was never meant to make you cling to people out of fear. It was meant to teach you discernment. It was meant to show you the difference between presence and attachment, between connection and dependency. You were not being isolated to weaken you. You were being refined so that when you reconnect, it will be from strength, awareness, and choice, not from need. Point 3. Why your energy became unreadable and unpredictable. There was a time when people could anticipate your reactions with almost mechanical accuracy. They knew which buttons to press, which words to use, and which tone would pull you into explaining yourself, defending your intentions, or proving your worth. They learned your emotional patterns and mistook that access for closeness, control, or entitlement. That access is gone now, not because you hardened, but because you matured. You didn't announce the change or dramatize your growth. You didn't send closure messages or demand understanding. You simply stopped reacting. This is one of the most misunderstood phases of the Chosen One's journey, because from the outside it looks like distance, coldness, or indifference. But from the inside it feels like something entirely different. It feels like stability. It feels like peace returning to the body. Your nervous system learned that urgency is not the same as importance and that not every stimulus deserves a response. Your spirit learned that silence is not weakness, it is authority. When a soul becomes unreadable, manipulation loses its grip. People who relied on your predictability feel unsettled around you now because they no longer know where they stand. They sense the shift, even if they cannot explain it. Conversations feel different. Their tactics fall flat. Their emotional hooks no longer catch. This is why some pulled away without explanation. Not because you did something wrong, but because your calm exposed their chaos. Your restraint exposed their urgency. Your grounded presence disrupted dynamics that were built on emotional leverage. You didn't become quiet to punish anyone. You became quiet because regulation replaced reaction. You stopped leaking energy into situations that fed on your attention. You stopped negotiating your peace for the comfort of others. In this phase, you are no longer ruled by the need to be understood, liked, or validated. You move with discernment instead of impulse. You observe more than you speak. You choose when to engage and when to remain still. This is not avoidance, it is mastery. This is the moment when your inner world becomes more important than external noise. The Chosen One does not need to prove power through volume or reaction. Power is felt most strongly when it is calm, contained, and intentional. And now, without trying, you carry that presence everywhere you go. Point 4. What the Emergency Summit actually represents. This is not about literal secret rooms or physical gatherings. This is about energetic recognition, the kind that happens long before words are spoken or decisions are made. There are systems in this world, social, psychological, professional, and spiritual, that function best when people are predictable, emotionally reactive, and internally divided. These systems thrive on insecurity and on the constant need for validation, urgency, approval, and conflict. When someone lives in that state, they are easy to steer, easy to pressure, and easy to exhaust. But the moment a person stabilizes internally, something subtle yet powerful shifts. They no longer respond on cue. They no longer over-explain, overreact, or chase outcomes. And because of that, they stop fitting into the expected pattern. The summit is symbolic of this moment of recalibration. It is not a place you're invited to. It is a threshold you cross. It reveals itself when resistance increases without a logical cause, when doors feel heavier just as you stop forcing them, and when obstacles appear precisely at the moment you decide to move calmly instead of desperately. You may notice people projecting confusion, irritation, or even hostility onto you, despite the fact that you haven't changed your behavior at all. What has changed is your internal posture. Your presence no longer feeds the same emotional loops. You are no longer easily rushed, guilted, flattered, or provoked into proving yourself. And when influence stops working, pressure often increases as a last attempt to restore the old dynamic. This is not because you are doing something wrong. It is not punishment, and it is not an attack. It is feedback. It is evidence that you are no longer operating from fragmentation. Stability disrupts systems that rely on instability. Calm exposes manipulation. Stillness reveals who benefited from your chaos. At this stage, life tests whether your grounded state is real or temporary. The challenge is not to fight the pressure, but to remain coherent within it. This is where many people self-sabotage by reacting, explaining, or retreating back into familiar patterns. But if you hold your center, the resistance eventually reorganizes itself around you. What once pushed against you begins to adjust. You are not being blocked, you are being reclassified. This is the moment where your energy is no longer processed as reactive input, but recognized as a fixed variable. And fixed variables change equations without making noise. Point 5. How the armor was built without your permission or awareness. Armor is not given in moments of confidence, it is forged in moments of restraint, in the quiet seconds where you felt the urge to defend yourself and chose silence instead, where you felt misunderstood and resisted the instinct to correct the narrative. Every time you chose not to explain yourself, a layer formed, not visible, not dramatic, but precise and permanent. Every time you absorbed misinterpretation without retaliation, reinforcement occurred, teaching your nervous system that your worth does not fluctuate with other people's comprehension. Every time you walked away instead of proving your value, another plate locked into place, sealing a lesson that power does not announce itself and truth does not beg for recognition. This armor is not aggression, and it was never meant to intimidate. It is self-containment, the discipline of knowing who you are without needing to broadcast it. You learned how to hold your ground internally, how to stay rooted when external noise tried to destabilize you. You learned how to be present without being accessible, how to show up without handing yourself over for inspection, judgment, or consumption. You learned how to observe without absorbing, to witness behaviors, projections, and emotional bait without letting them lodge inside your identity. This is the refinement most people never reach because it requires patience over performance and restraint over reaction. This is why old tactics stopped working on you. What once would have pulled you into emotional loops, defensiveness, over-explaining, self-doubt, and the need to be understood, now passes through you without attachment. You no longer chase clarity from those committed to confusion. You no longer negotiate your peace to win temporary approval. Your silence is no longer confusion, it is containment. Your distance is no longer avoidance, it is discernment. This is armor, not hardness, not bitterness, not emotional shutdown, but grounded self-trust, the kind that allows you to move through spaces without shrinking or overextending. You don't resist anymore, you remain. You don't prove anymore, you embody. And because of that, the world meets you differently now. What tries to penetrate finds no entry point, not because you are closed, but because you are complete. Point 6. Why this protection phase feels like a delay, but isn't. Protection phases often feel stagnant because the movement taking place is not designed to be visible. It is internal, structural, and foundational. From the outside, it appears as though nothing is happening, as though life has placed you on pause while others continue to advance. But inside, everything is being quietly reorganized. This is the stage where many chosen ones begin to question their path. They watch others gain recognition, build wealth, expand socially, and step into public spaces, while their own life feels restrained, limited, or delayed. What remains hidden is that premature exposure can collapse a destiny before it is ready to stand. Some callings demand depth before reach. Some assignments require emotional discipline before authority. This phase was never designed to amplify your visibility. It was meant to expand your capacity. Capacity to carry pressure without breaking. Capacity to stand alone without becoming bitter. Capacity to lead without being driven by ego or validation. The silence sharpened your discernment. The slowness trained you to move with precision rather than impulse. Every delay strengthened your inner structure. Nothing about this phase was accidental. Nothing was wasted. Point 7. What emerges when the protection phase ends? This is the part most people misunderstand. When this phase ends, your life does not suddenly become loud. It becomes aligned. People begin to gravitate toward you again, but you no longer seek their approval. Opportunities arise, but you no longer chase them. Attention returns, but it does not intoxicate you. You move differently now. Your decisions come from clarity, not urgency. Your presence carries weight without force, and because of this, you naturally repel what is misaligned without confrontation. The loneliness prepared you to stand alone even when surrounded. The isolation taught you how to remain sovereign in connection. This is why the armor was necessary, not to isolate you forever, but to ensure that when connection returns, it does not destabilize you. Chosen one, the silence you walked through was not abandonment, it was alignment. The distance you endured was not rejection, it was refinement. If this message articulated what you have been feeling but could not explain, comment, "I am chosen," like this video, and subscribe. You were not hidden because you were insignificant. You were hidden because timing matters. And now, you are ready.